I think we need to switch our minds and try to understand that actually we need to try to learn how to make more money.
Your content, it's very painful to watch.
I'll be very honest and I'll give the harsh advice. You are alone as a man many a times because no one's going to pay your bills apart from you. If you cannot even take your son to the masjid, and then when he's 16 and you're saying go to the masjid, he hasn't been going to the masjid for 16 years. If you can't be there for your mother when she needs you, and you feel like I need to go to a job because I need to get paid my salary and stuff like that, you do not want to be in that situation, man. Women want to have healthy conversations with their husbands. If you're at dinner and you're just on the phone, that is not actually comforting for your wife. I think this is the first time on a podcast I will give 50% of the answer.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the StriveMed podcast, hosted by myself, Dr. Inam.
Dr. Zach.
And today we have a very special guest with us, a very close companion of mine, Allah Barak, and I look up to him as a ustad and a mentor. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, he is a successful Muslim entrepreneur running 6 different businesses, entrepreneur, educator as well, and he is a recruitment specialist as well. Tabarakallah, thank you so much for coming down. It's nice to have you here. Just a quick word from our sponsors. Healthy Nikah for any healthcare professionals looking to get married, or anyone who wants to get married to a healthcare professional as well. As well as this, we have a special gift box from Marate, our perfume sponsor. So give it a try, inshallah.
Is this for me?
Yeah,
Gift
this
is
for you.
Okay.
For you, bro.
Allah. Yeah, I'll check this out. Am I checking this now?
Yeah,
or?
give it a try. Give it a try.
Okay, give it a
We
try.
know you're a perfume
I am a perfume guy, you know. I am a perfume guy.
You don't have to try all of them. You can just try one.
You know, I'll try it after.
Yeah.
I'll try it after,
Yeah.
inshallah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, the bottle's nice. Box is nice as well.
Yeah.
But this is a special perfume brand. It's a dentist, good friend of ours, and he's done a tremendous job. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So we know you're a perfume connoisseur as well. So inshallah, you'll love it.
I like to smell nice.
Barakallah feek. So just to give us a bit of, and our audience a bit of background on how we met and our journey with yourself and your content as well, okay? So first and foremost, I would say I discovered your content when I was finishing med school, okay? And it's very painful to watch, okay? And let me explain why. Because it tells you the raw reality of the economic system that we live in and the climate in which you live. So right now, basically at that point, I was at the stage where I'm graduating medical school, one of the most highly sought after degrees. And I'm thinking, okay, this is my life set, my trajectory is set, and everything's going well. I'm going to be able to finance, I'm going to be able to support the family, you know, by myself and things like this, right? And you're faced with the painful realities of the fact that even if you were to have a salary of 100,000, how much are you actually going to keep? And the reality is that how easy is it, or how difficult is it to actually sustain with a one-person salary in this day and age without a side hustle? So you're faced with that crazy reality of just realizing that, okay, subhanAllah, I either have 2 options to take from this. One option is that I have to put in a crazy amount of work, way more than the average civilian who's just happy with his life and happy to settle for average. Or you just ignore and you just hate on the content and say that, no, how can you say this? This is not true, etc. So that's basically the reality I was faced with, right? And the reason why this ties in so closely, you may be wondering why you're on a medical podcast right now. The reason why this ties in so closely with what we've seen is the actual consequences of those people who don't listen to your advice. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of that. We've been running GP clinics, myself and Zakaria. People coming in, you see the consequences of the cost of living crisis. People are facing anxiety, struggling to make ends meet. And they're thinking that the problem's not necessarily with the system, the problem's with us, okay, with us and our ability to cope with the pressures. So they're coming to say, we need anxiety medication. We've got bailiffs coming to our house tomorrow. We're struggling to pay the council tax. We're struggling to pay everything, struggling to sustain mortgage, debt, you name it. So these people end up in our clinics, okay? And not just that, but also the impacts and the negative consequences of not having enough to sustain yourself that goes into every single walk of life. We talk about healthcare, okay? And healthcare and optimizing your health is not just from the physical perspective. When you have diseases and you have physical health, you also have spiritual health, okay? Physical, social, mental. all of these different aspects of your life which are impacted by not having enough finances, not having enough means. So mainly just wanted to kind of discuss these different elements with you from all the different lenses of being broke, really, and like the struggles of what it's like, really. And I think the first most important thing, which is a component of optimal health, the most important part of your health is spiritual health, right? If you have all your physical health, but you're spiritually, you're ill, you have diseases, you have shubuhat, shahawat, all of these problems, then what kind of health is that at the end of the day? So throughout this podcast, we'll be comparing two different realities, right? One is that of someone who's made something for himself, someone who's an entrepreneur, he's actually internalized the content which you've shared. And the other reality is someone who's accepted wage slavery, essentially, right? He's accepted that he's going to live a subpar lifestyle. He doesn't want to maximize all the different parameters of his life and success. So just a quick definition of wage slavery before we take it to Abu Musa for our audience. Okay, so definition of wage slavery is a person who is wholly dependent on income from employment, typically employment of an arduous or menial nature. Okay, there's another definition as well. The situation of wage slavery can be loosely defined as a person's dependence on wages or a salary for their livelihood, especially when wages are low, treatment and conditions are poor, and there are few chances of upwards mobility. Okay, barakallah feek. So I know I've spoken a lot, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to expand upon the core messages of your content, and why it might be painful for viewers to understand, why it's so important to understand. And then we wanted to touch upon as well the first part which we wanted to cover, which is the purpose of your life. And why when you're working as a wage slave, essentially, it's it can be a risk factor for you not to understand your true purpose of life. So inshallah, over to you, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, amma ba'd. First of all, barakallah feek for even having me here. Like, it's an honor for me to sit here opposite you two, and it's always a pleasure having conversations with you guys, and we've had many of those in the past. So I appreciate you guys, and it's an honor for me to even come on your podcast, first of all.
Barakallah feek.
Wa feek. It's interesting. I actually want to, for the audience to really understand this point, let's have a discussion. Okay? So, a lot of the youth, okay, when they hear, I've got two experts, people within the medical field sitting opposite me right now. When you're young, you want to, the one of the best careers you can go into, one of the most lucrative careers you can go into, it's the medical field. Am I correct in that saying, right?
Of course.
And so we would say, and again, it's it's not to say that there aren't other roles, of course there are, but comparably, and this is what's fed into our brains, is the medical field. If you get a job into the medical field, you are in essence sorted for life. So let me ask you the question, is what is the reality behind that? And let me ask you in other words, right? If you're a GP, what sort of salary are you on 2-3 years after practice? That's a question.
I would say
After
as
you
a salary GP, you can get 90k,
90k, right?
100k,
which is very, very good. Now I'm not going to sit here opposite anyone and say that's not good, right? That's great. So at what age would that be, assuming that obviously you went to university and you didn't miss any years out?
30 years old once you're a GP.
Okay.
Earliest possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so starting salary for a GP, I assume, is not 90, or is it 90?
No, it's not. It's not. Starting salary would be around. I may get this wrong, and we'll double check.
We'll give rough. We'll give approximates. We don't have to be exact.
Maybe
It's no
60
problem.
to 70k.
I'm sure the audience can understand that we're sort of spitting numbers here right now. So 60, 70 is the starting salary, and that you would be obviously 30 years old, right? So just to give the audience, and obviously my background is recruitment, and I deal with salaries all the time, and so I have a rough idea of obviously what that is. And so 60 to 70,000, let's say 60,000, if you have a student loan, and it's not something that I advocate, but I'm just saying, if you did have one, assuming you went to university and did medicine, and obviously a lot of people assume that you have to, therefore take out loans and so on and so forth, you'd probably be looking at around £3,500, roughly there or thereabouts. Could be a couple of hundred more, could be even less. That's on £60,000. Now that's at the age of 30 years old. Now, as young men, we would like to think that we would want to be married by the age of 30 years old, right? We would like to think that maybe even, inshallah, Allah blesses us with a couple of children by the age of 30, right? In an ideal situation, right? Now, £60,000, £3,500 a month. And I think this is the problem. This is what it comes down to. Because when someone says to you, what salary are you on? How much money do you want to be on? Where do you want to be on in 5 years? You always say £70,000 a year, £80,000 a year, £100,000 a year. But you know what the reality is? That's not the real number. Because that's not actually how much you get.
Yeah.
Nobody really talks about how much money do you be left with at the end of the month after tax and deductions. Now, interesting conversation I had with a relative of mine, and he wanted to, he was looking to get into medicine, and he was already actually studying medicine. This is the exact conversation I had with him. I said to him, so you want to do medicine? Obviously, fantastic, great. He was going to one of the best universities as well. He said, yeah, man, just want to make the money. Just, you know what, if I could be on £80,000 a year, before like I'm 30 years old, I'm loving it. This conversation happened about 3 years ago. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So, bearing in mind, this guy's already got into medicine, and therefore he's probably one of the smartest young people that can be around, right? Because there's no other way you're getting into medicine, especially one of the best universities. He said to me that £80,000 a year, probably about, £7,000-8,000 a month. I asked him that question, and he said £7,000-8,000. This guy is already ready to become a doctor. He is a smart individual. He thinks it's £7,000-8,000 a month. Now, bearing in mind, 80 divided by 12 is obviously not, £8,000. Point here is nobody does the numbers.
Yeah, properly. And the thing is, it's worse than that, bro. You know why? Because it not only is people don't work out how much they've got left after tax deduction, student loan, but also they don't forget that cost of living increases as well. They've got warped understanding of how much rent costs, how much standard of living costs.
And there is a problem here, bro, because especially the community that all three of us come from, especially the families and our backgrounds, we are sheltered away from the reality of life. Let's speak about this
100.
because it's a fact. Our parents don't really want to tell us about bills and electricity and gas and council tax and, how much rent is going up. They don't really like to talk to us about that. And to be honest, maybe that's a good thing because the kids should be worrying about education and they shouldn't worry about what bills are or what these things are. That's adult stuff, right? But then guess what happens? When you turn at a certain age and you get married and you want to move into your own house and that sort of thing, all of a sudden, gas, electricity, council tax, rent, you forget paying for the internet bill, paying for the water bill. You do not know these things exist when you're working a job in your youth and when you're trying to get a job. And the point is this: not only is it important to do the numbers, it's also important to understand how much are you actually going to end up spending. Anywhere London, you're paying close to let's just be honest, close to £2,000 rent. You are paying that close if you're near London.
100%.
So, if as a doctor you're making, £60,000 at 30 years old, paying £2,000 towards rent, and then you've got electric, gas, and so on and so forth, you'll probably pay £1,000 extra in bills. As a doctor, as someone who you are in essence one of the most highest paying people, you're basically left with £500-600. And you haven't even had children at this point. We're not even talking about that. That's the reality.
And you want to get married much earlier than that as well.
Of course.
To be honest, I don't like the idea of those who complain about salaries. Oh, salaries should be this much, they should be this much. I really like your approach of, to be honest, I would personally think in this day and age, any single job you have, you're going to want to look for making a side hustle. If you want to support your family, you want to take things to the next level.
Yes.
And change the cycle for generations to come, inshallah. So I think I just wanted to touch upon one concept, right?
Sure.
So when you're placed in this dunya, right? We're all placed in this dunya by Allah. Allah has fashioned all of us, and we have this dunya as a test for us to perform, okay, with regards to the outcome in the akhirah of Jannah or Jahannam, right? So give people the example of someone who went to sleep in his bed. He wakes up and he's on a train which is moving. There's no one else there. He doesn't really know, okay? So there's 3 key questions which he would ask, right? Why am I here? Okay. Who put me here? And where is this going? Okay. So these are the 3 key questions which is innate within our fitrah to ask okay, within society. If you're placed alone to think for yourself, then you'll essentially start to ask these questions, you'll answer them, and you'll use the sources of scriptures which you have, Quran, Sunnah, obviously, to explain this reality to you, okay? So there's two options people take. One is that they realize, okay, I'm hungry now, I need to feed myself. So they're stuck in this cycle of just feeding themselves right all the way until they've died, essentially. They've not realized their true purpose, okay? وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah mentions that, that I have not created the jinn kind and the mankind except to worship me, okay? And that's anything that Allah is pleased with, okay? The actions that He has ordained and that He is pleased with. And then the other option is that, okay, while we're here, we'll just maximize our entertainment, maximize our pleasures, etc. So I wanted to talk about this idea of just getting by, getting your basic sustenance, and how this whole cycle of wage slavery can actually distract you from your purpose, not give you any time to reflect, and just that whole cycle and the dangers of it.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, to be fair. And I think it's important to highlight that there is a clear difference between being content and trying to achieve something. There is a difference, because actually when you and people especially with our backgrounds and who are Muslims, they misunderstand the difference between trying to achieve something and being content with what you have, because you should always be content with what you have, but you should be achieving and trying to do something for yourself as well, right? You should be trying to work hard and you should be trying to make something of yourself, and so you should be content with the £5 a month, right? So here, it's not to say you're not content with something, but it's to say as a Muslim, you should be thriving and trying to achieve something for yourself. As a Muslim, that's a good thing, right? And so, apologies, your question was?
With regards to your purpose and just constantly being focused on making ends meet, and you don't have any time to reflect. You're just going to work, coming back, recovering from that, and that's it.
An example I give is when I was working a job, and I worked a job within the corporate field for about 5 years. And so I completely understand and relate exactly where the problems are when it comes to the corporate world, right? Only when I left that corporate world and I reflected, and as Muslims, we should always reflect on everything, did I realize how many issues there were. So for example, when I would work my job and I would come home at 6-7 o'clock in the evening and I was tired from work, bearing in mind, and I'm sure as doctors it's probably much harder for you guys, right? But at 6-7 o'clock when I would come home, my mum would just ask me about, what food do you want?
Yeah.
Wallahi, I tell you, and it's embarrassing to say that I didn't even have the energy to have a conversation with my mother at that point. And I would it was just like, oh, mum, just whatever, whatever you've made, And that's how I'd speak.
SubhanAllah.
And imagine days and days and days and days would go past and maybe I didn't have the energy to have a conversation with my mother. And these are the things that you have to reflect on, right? You go to work, you come home. Do you even, and this is, I would say that for the brothers that are married, okay, and this is why you need to, if you have someone in the medical field, maybe it's good for you guys, and this is why you should sign up to, what's it called?
Healthy nikah.
Yeah. Healthy nikah, you know what I mean? So what I would say though is women are emotionally very demanding, okay? Generically speaking, women want to have healthy conversations with their husbands and want to have, so if you're at dinner and you're just on the phone and you take your wife out, that is not actually comforting for your wife. What your wife actually wants, she would much rather you order a burger meal and sit at home and have a conversation with her.
Attention, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Attention.
Yeah.
That emotional attention is very important for women, generically speaking again.
Yeah.
The fact is this, that when you're going to your jobs and coming home, it is extremely difficult to sit with your wife and have a deep conversation for an hour. That is massively demanding. Let's be real. That is demanding, and actually you're interested, you're giving back, you're listening. That is the least we can do as husbands with our wives, to have good, healthy conversations. And the reality is let's be honest, when you're tired from work, you want to be left alone. So when your wife is all excited, and guess what? This happens. This is the reality, by the way. Your wife is all excited. She's at home now. Husband's home. After all day, husband's home, right? She's cooked a nice meal for you. She's sitting there. She's like, yeah, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to speak to my husband, etc. And you're there. You're a little bit grumpy. You don't want to talk to your wife. You're like, oh, I can't be asked right now. Yeah, thanks, man, thanks. Now, slowly, your wife will stop caring. It's a reality. Your wife will stop making that effort because you are not giving that same response, right? And There are numerous amount of things that we can factor in here, and here I'm talking about things that nobody really talks about and thinks about.
Yeah.
But actually, the most obvious being, you know, are you able to spend time on your religion, understanding something, you know, sitting in a class, memorizing Quran? Are you able to do these things? It's extremely difficult. You can do it, no doubt, and you should always do it. I think that's important to say, that you should always be making time, but it is difficult, isn't it? It makes it much harder.
Yeah, 100. So what you're basically saying, bro, to summarize, is that if you can't even hold a simple conversation, how on earth do you expect to do more sort of acts of ibadah that are more, you know, strenuous on the body or mentally and physically? And it's true, you know, like these conversations I've had with Inam plenty of times, and we've discussed how much a long working day, hours, strenuous hours, being at work can affect your spirituality. And it's not to sort of make an excuse and say, because obviously without shadow of a doubt, this is why we've been created, right? For the purpose of worshiping Allah. And you can actually instill that and infuse that intention into every single act you do, even at work. You can make that form of ibadah. However, as you mentioned, there's a need to strive and achieve greater than, you know, what you're achieving now. And you always have to have ulu al-himma, high aspirations in Islam, right? So why would you just settle for doing the bare minimum in the deen? You want to be from the forerunners, sabiqun lil khairat, right? You want to be from the forerunners, always doing khair, and you're not going to be able to do that being stuck in this cycle and just going to work every day, being drained, etc., etc.
Well, it's part of our fitrah to actually want to achieve more.
Exactly.
To achieve the highest we possibly can. It's part of our fitrah, bro. We want to, like, and when you're just standstill and you're not growing and you're not, you know, and like you'll hear this from some brothers. Oh man, I'm like, you know, a brother who's 32, who is married with kids and a family and etc., he'll be like, yeah, alhamdulillah. A brother who's not married at 32, who doesn't have kids and isn't maybe where he wants to be in his career, will be like, yeah, bro, I'm depressed. Bro, we want to achieve. It's natural and it's good. Strive with it and tell yourself. I think the biggest problem here, and to conclude this part, and obviously we don't have to conclude, but into conclusion to what we've just said, is the biggest problem is not understanding and accepting the problem. That is the problem. Because most people would just be like, no, it's not. But everyone works and everyone does this. So it's not that deep. Not accepting the problem and not understanding there is a problem is the biggest problem. Because until you realize there's a problem, you will never come up with a solution.
Bro, subhanAllah, you know, I just thought of something very deep, is the fact that you were mentioning that you have limited energy to engage with your wife with regards to discussions, having emotional discussions, right? What about the concept of khushu', subhanAllah, with the Almighty and the one who has control of your wife's heart, of everyone's heart, subhanAllah. You cannot even, I'm not to say you cannot, but all of these faculties which are being drained by your workplace and working too much can essentially impact your ability to have khushu'. You just speed through your prayers and there's a sense of robotic work. This can also be exemplified and accentuated by the workplace, where they have not that much critical thinking. Okay, you have to do this job, you do this job. So more and more, when you do this without actually critically thinking and reflecting, you become more into a robot. And this is not to say that going to work is bad. We're not saying that by any means of the imagination, but obviously if you have a good intention, right? Even if you're within the stage of wage slavery, you need to have that intention. But that intention will not be strengthened unless you actually reflect upon it. And something interesting is that anything which is done repetitively, okay, there's more chance of the intention being changed in that process. So even scholars, even senior mashayikh who regularly give khutbahs, they have to review their intention, because this is just a normal Monday for them. Oh yeah, Monday is my class, my morning class, and you can tend to become robotic in that. You can tend to become robotic
Autopilot,
in your prayers as well. So subhanAllah, I just managed to make that click, that khushu' with Allah is the utmost. Like when you've been destroyed at work, you come home, are you really going to have that same level of khushu' and emotion with Allah to call upon Him, make that dua? Like,
bro, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because and I have mentioned this a couple of times before, right? I still remember, bro, the first day I went to work. And so my first day when I went to work, obviously it was a long day, you know, I was tired, etc., etc. And I am not an emotional person by any means. And I say that unfortunately, and I say this, it comes with some negativity as well, right? Wallahi, I tell you, bro, I went to, I think it was Isha, basically. I went to Salah and I was in Ruku. Bro, when I was in Ruku, I felt so emotional. Wallahi, I felt so emotional because you know what I was thinking? I just finished work and I felt super tired. My legs felt shaky, bro. Wallahi, my legs felt shaky. And I thought to myself, how am I going to do this every day? That point, I said, how am I going to do this every day? Like, I felt emotional, bro, because it was like, you know, before this, I was praying a lot of my salahs in the masjid. I would just chill with the brothers like 10 minutes after and 10 minutes before. And like, it was nice. And your iman is high and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, it was like, I was super tired. I had to force myself to get up from the sofa and I was laying on the sofa, get up and go to Isha and then pray salah and then come home because I have to go work tomorrow. It's the little things you don't realize, bro. It's the little things that, you know, become something. And before you know it, one salah, you might not make Isha in the masjid. And then two, that's it's a slow thing. And again, I want to emphasize, bro, that it's not about saying that working a job, not by any means. I actually think it's important to work a job for a few years at least, right? And I think it actually teaches a lot. And this isn't just to say we're bad-mouthing jobs and stuff like that. The only thing I emphasize all the time is try to achieve more than just working a job for 40 years. And if that's a bad message, then I don't know what to say. But that's the only message I have. Work your job, but try to achieve more than a job and try to do something for yourself and don't just work a job for 40 years. You know, your time is the most valuable thing. And when you're 65 years old, sitting at home and you've worked for 40 years of your life sort of thing, and your grandchild comes to you and says, you know, what were the, granddad, what were the 3 best days of your life? You will never mention the days you went to work.
That's true, subhanAllah.
You know, but 80% of your life would have gone on work. So create the good memories, man, because that's what you're going to remember.
100%. Facts. You know, I don't want to leave this topic too soon, yeah? Because we're going to go on to talk about different aspects and how, achieving more actually benefits you in every aspect of your life, whether it be your health. I won't give too much away, but every aspect. But this spirituality aspect and like this topic we're on in terms of how it benefits your deen is extremely important. And if we can't acknowledge this, or if the viewers are unable to acknowledge this, then there's no point, delving into the other aspects. And there's one thing I want you to touch upon, bro, because I've seen you've mentioned it before. When you were working corporate, I want you to tell us how. So we've already discussed how it affects you in terms of your like the work taking up your mental load, like being a lot of mental energy, taking a lot of mental energy, and you not being able to have khushu', as we mentioned, have conversations, etc., give people their rights. But how about how much would you say, like during that time that you've worked, how often have you had to compromise your religiosity, for example, whether it be your salah, etc.? I'll let you discuss and speak about it. But this is, I think, another aspect that people don't realize, especially within corporate world is, I think, big on this.
You know, obviously, I think to be honest with you, the saddest part is of course it's the little things that people don't talk about. I can give the easy answer and say that, it's the fact that, I have to rush my salah.
Yeah.
That's the easy answer. Because let's be honest, that is something that everyone struggles in, sort of thing, right? But I'll give you a deeper answer. The deeper answer which nobody talks about, because the obvious answers are obvious. It affects your salah. For Friday, Jummah, you're rushing, these are obvious answers. We all know this stuff.
Yeah.
I promise you guys, it's the deeper things that affect you. Wallahi, it is the deepest things. And I realize this, right? And I'll give you guys an idea. This is to show how deep these things are, and you don't realize how these things affect you. And it's the deeper things that lead on to other bigger things. We know this. As the scholars, they speak about this, the people of knowledge, they speak about this. It's the smaller things that go on to become bigger things. You're sitting there in the corporate environment, right? Many offices, the radio's playing. Music in the background. You're sitting there doing your work, little song comes on, you're like, whatever sort of thing. A week later, you're like, that sounds all right. That's exactly what happens in corporate environments.
Slowly chips away. Yeah.
Slowly chips away.
Yeah.
There's a time, and again, many of the people will be like, no, it's not something we do, etc. But Friday, corporate environments, people are going to the pub.
Oh, socials, yeah.
The social events. Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you guys, there are many corporate environments where you will not get promoted unless you're being sociable with everyone.
Yeah.
That's a fact. In a lot of the corporate companies, you will not get promoted if you are seen to be someone who is antisocial. So imagine you being a Muslim is affecting your promotions, and unfortunately, many people will, their deen unfortunately slips away at that point because it's like, I'm going to make another $5,000 a year. Many a times, a lady will come in front of you, and you'll end up shaking her hand. It's not to say I have, because alhamdulillah I haven't. But this is the situation, the positions you find yourself in. And it's the little things, man. It's the little things, like you're surrounding yourself in an environment where jokes are being cracked, etc., and some aren't acceptable. Many of the jokes that are being cracked are not acceptable for Muslims, right? But you're there, and maybe you don't say anything, then you crack a little joke here, and this is the thing, that you don't realize how it affects your iman. You don't realize, right? The radio coming on and having music in the background for 9 hours. For many companies, by the way, guys, it's 9 hours a day for 2 years. And where you're thinking about salah and you're thinking, my khushu in salah isn't good. What you don't realize is, of course, concentrate on your khushu in your salah, but you don't realize maybe you're being affected and poisoned somewhere else as well. And that's the reality.
That's deep, man. Yeah, because obviously people don't think about this. Like, this is the part that people don't think about. And it's, as you mentioned, it's not to say like you shouldn't do, like, we're not telling people not to work. Everyone needs, like, you have to earn a living at the end of the day. However, these are things that I think are overlooked big time.
I think if that's the only thing we talk about on this pod, is that preserve your deen. And I think that's why it's a magnificent thing which you're encouraging others to do, is that encourage others to set up their own establishment so that they can then hire, whether it's brothers or sisters they want to hire, but it's an environment which is appropriate, which is regulated appropriately, that they're comfortable with, they're able to practice their deen. But this is absolutely profound, subhanAllah. Those small things can really lead to bigger things. Just wanted to also touch upon the aspect of being at the rock bottom. Okay, so let's put this into context, right? A man in the current environment, right, they start to develop the desires, they want to build a family, they want to settle down, etc. All of these things naturally, biologically, it occurs, especially with the development of testosterone, etc. So okay, he's done all of these years, okay, due to the schooling system, etc., what have you. He's preserved his chastity. He's not been able to, especially by a societal level, it's not really expected of him either to earn a living at that stage in this society, right? So he's preserved his chastity all of these years, and then he realizes that he's hit with the hard truth. It's very hard for him to sustain a family. Talk to us about the mental impacts of being at rock bottom when you don't know what's going to come next, how you're going to get out of this situation, how you're going to get married. And when that hits you, it can sometimes often hit you very hard as well.
Yeah, and it's important to mention here, and it's like, for both of you brothers now, for example, right, you have to give praise where it's due, right? And you sit in front of me as, doctors, and you're sitting here saying there are issues. There are issues. We've been studying for how many years? 10 years plus, trying to become a doctor. And after becoming a doctor, you sit there and you say, well, let's be honest, there are issues here. Most people don't accept that. If we're being completely honest, most people, I know people who have, started trying to become an accountant at the age of 17, and now they're 23, and they convince themselves, we've spent 8 years doing it. We can't tell ourselves it wasn't the right decision. You convince yourself so much that no matter what happens, no matter the obvious is in front of you, and you'll be like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. I'm happy, right? And look, it's good that, and I think people should be like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm happy, sort of thing, and that's fine. But sometimes you have to face reality. Sometimes, are you being fair to your family? Are you actually, able to live the life that you want? Are you able to do these things? And I think it's important to mention that most people, when they get into this situation, when the hard reality hits them, they don't want to speak to anyone. And this is why I mentioned that hats off sort of thing, because accepting there's a problem, you're then willing to speak to people about it. You then might have a conversation with your friend, and your friend might turn around and be like, bro, I feel the same sort of thing, right? But unless you accept it, unless you're like, you know what, I've been doing something for 7-8 years, it's a problem, until then, you're not going to speak to anyone about it. And then you're going to keep it in yourself. And then every single day, you're going to wait for the letters to come through the post. You're going to wait for the bills to come through the post. And you're going to be thinking, I've only got £200 left on my account. I hope my wife doesn't say to me, let's go for dinner, because I don't know how I'm going to tell her.
Yeah.
This is an honest conversation.
Yeah.
Guys, like this happens. The things that I'm talking about, many people right now are watching or listening to this, and they're saying, yeah, I'll wait for the post, right? Yep. If my wife says to me on the 26th of the month, where I've got 2 days left, should we go for dinner? And I'm thinking that's going to cost me 100 quid. Let's be honest. You're going to drive to the restaurant. You're going to drive back. Maybe you've got a child, you get something nice, £100 easily, right? So these are the things that you have to, accept that if there is a problem, accept it. That's the best advice I can give. If there is a problem, accept it. Speak to your wife, speak to the friends, speak to people around you. So maybe someone can help you come up with a solution, and you will start trying to work on your solution. But until then, like if you just keep it within yourself, you really will you will hit depression, because you're keeping it within yourself and you're telling yourself everything's fine. But every single month you're stressed. You are stressed about the letters, about someone asking you for something going up, the tires mess up. You have to now pay for the car insurance.
Yeah.
The sudden things that come up every month, you'll sit there, and people do this. I promise you guys, people do this, right? They sit there and they think, if I save £500 every month, then in a year I'm going to have £6,000. In 2 years I'm going to have £12,000. And then with £12,000 I can get a nice car. That'd be nice. A lot of people do this, right? And guess what happens 3 months later? That £500 that they factored in, they never factored in things going wrong. Like something messing up in the house, the wife needed a dress, a wedding came up, the kid needs clothes, the boiler messes up, the tires mess up, the cost of living goes up, someone, your mother, you wanted to get her a gift. These things and so I've got a rule, and I always say it. I've been terrible with money, by the way. It's not to say I'm not actually a great saver. I've never have been, but I think where the focus is trying to save all the time, I think we need to switch our minds and try to understand that actually we need to try to learn how to make more money. We need to try to start side hustles, try to start something for yourself, because actually if you can start making an extra £100 a month today, then in a year's time, in 2 years time, you might be making an extra £3,000. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But if you save £100 today, right, new government comes in, cost of living goes up, now all of a sudden £50 left. 2 years later, £20 left. How much are you going to try saving?
Well, how do you cope with that stress? Because obviously this is what we alluded to earlier. This is where people can take the other path. They come into the clinics. There's even some people who commit suicide. They reach that level where they just can't handle it. But in your position, let's say in X person's position, his wife doesn't know what's in the bank account. And just a caveat as well, we're not encouraging people to delay marriage unnecessarily. You should get married when you have the basic means to do so. But you're just scraping by. The wife doesn't know what's in your account. You're expected to steer the ship, pull something off. It's immense stress. How do you essentially navigate that situation? How do you steer the ship and make sure that you get out into a better situation?
So, I'll tell you guys, maybe it's a funny story, to be fair. So I've mentioned many times before, I don't think I've ever mentioned this side, to be fair. But, alhamdulillah, I set up my recruitment company when I was 25 years old. Today I'm 32. And I laugh because I turned 32 yesterday, so that's why I'm laughing about it. To be fair, no, I'm not even going to tell you. It's actually today. But basically, when COVID happened, so alhamdulillah, the business was making good money, right? And I remember it was like January time. Alhamdulillah, we were doing really well. And I remember reflecting on myself and saying, alhamdulillah, like Allah Azza wa Jalla really has blessed me, everything, like I'm very thankful, etc., etc. Anyway, February, COVID, we start hearing that cases are coming, right? And my recruitment company focuses on engineering. A lot of engineering manufacturing comes from China. So when something happens in China, it gets affected in the UK, right? That's basically how it works. So I probably knew about COVID before, I would say, 90% of people, because it was affecting China.
Yeah.
And I was hearing how it's affecting companies in the UK, right? So to give you an idea, right? I'll be very frank, to be fair. I have been frank on my social media quite obviously, right? If we were probably doing about 20 to 25 in net profit in January, and in May, January, February, March, in about 3 months time, 3 months from Jan, basically, whatever that is. So about April time, as soon as lockdown happened, I think it was about April, we went to making £400 a month. So from 25
Big
to 400, £400. Now, as a business owner, by the way, you have to understand something. I have expenses, office rent, employees. I can't just not pay employees now.
Yeah.
There's so much overheads that you have as a business owner. So obviously, you know, we were making more, and you know, I'm talking about 400 revenue now. So what I was saying, 25 net, the 400 was revenue, right? That's all we were getting. So I'm there thinking, subhanallah. Now, that was in April. The end of May, my first child was coming. You know, alhamdulillah. So it was like in my head, and then my missus is there, and it's so funny, right? And I had this conversation with my missus about 2 years after. This is the situation I was in. I had about £10,000 just cash in my account, and that is all I had to my name. Right? I had £10,000 cash in my name, and that is all I had to my name. Probably about 15 to be fair, 10 to 15. Now, I knew I still had to run my business. I was not willing to go back into a job. On top of that, my missus was like, oh, like, we need to get a pram for the baby. We need to get this. We need to get that. I'm thinking, this kid is going to be the end of me, basically, right? SubhanAllah, you know, I realized, like, you know, the truth is, I'll be very honest and I'll give the harsh advice. You are alone as a man many a times because no one's going to pay your bills apart from you. And this is the advice I give to sometimes some people, and they'll be like, you know, often we worry about other people's opinion, but no one's going to pay your bills. We worry so much. I don't want to get on camera. I don't want to do this. I don't want, because he will say something. She will say something. Fulan will say something. Reality is, guys, no one's going to pay your bills in that situation. So I was in that situation. I, you know, alhamdulillah, qadarullah, we made it out and, you know, got a couple of placements, whatever sort of thing. But the funny thing is, I never told my missus that I was facing that. And I remember my missus getting so stressed because she's like, seems like you just don't care. Like, you're just not getting anything, right? And I was thinking, I need to pay wages before I get a pram, right? Like, I don't want to, you know. And obviously my missus was used to me being a little bit happy to spend, basically, right? Because obviously if I'm making something, then it's for my family. If I'm not going to spend for my family, what else am I going to spend for? 2 years later, I said to my missus, remember that time when, you know, I wasn't doing the room up the way you wanted, and, you know, you were like, I need this and that. And, you know, listen, to the brothers, a bit of advice. Your wives will tell you they need everything and anything when it comes to them having a child. And trust me, half their stuff is just accessories. You don't need it, basically, right? But anyway, and she was like, yeah. I was like, basically the business was practically like not making any money for like 3 months. And she was like, you'd never told me. SubhanAllah, I would never have known. And I was like, that's the thing, as a man, like sometimes we have to suck it up and like deal with it. And I can't sit there and whinge, because as bad as it is, what solution is that going to give me? Nothing. We have to realize no one's going to pay your bills apart from you. That's bad, man, but it's just reality.
You can't
So that's how you deal with it, bro. You just do it.
Yeah, listen, honestly, you deal with it by sucking it up and saying, listen, there is no one that's going to pay my bills apart from me. And every single day that I sit here whinging about my situation, my problems, my situation is going to get worse. That's the fact.
Yeah.
The longer I sit here doing nothing, if I am stressed about my situation, every single day that I spend doing nothing is only going to make me more stressed. Because time is a ticking time bomb. You know, and I found myself in that situation. So I knew, man, I just had to get on with it. And funnily enough, that's actually when I got on social media. Wow. That's when I came on social media when COVID happened. I was doing nothing. So I'd just go for a walk, because, you know, we were allowed to go for a walk. Boris thankfully said, yo, have a 15-minute walk, right? Yeah. So I would go for a little walk. I would make a couple of videos. And that's actually when the social media started.
Oh,
amazing. And the child and getting married in and of itself is a means through which Allah can enrich you.
100%.
You know, they don't have the required finances. Allah, from His bounty, can give them the finances to them. So,
yes.
SubhanAllah, it's very important for us to trust in Allah's judgment. We take those spiritual means as well. We're optimizing our salah. We're maintaining ties of kinship. We're doing our as much as we can, umrah, as much dua as we possibly can. Take all the spiritual means and just trust in Allah as well when you're at that rock bottom position. It's something very profound, inshallah. So we've touched upon quite extensively the difficulties of running things in marriage when you're at rock bottom, or when you're just basically struggling to make ends meet, limited energy, etc. All of these things, right? what about family life? Okay, that's another aspect of life which is extremely important in the life wheel. Yeah, the total holistic well-being of an individual. Spouse relationship is very important. Family relationship is very important, especially when it comes to birrul walidain. And this is where we've seen firsthand, being nice, taking care of our parents when we can, when we have the means to do so. A lot of the times when you're just making ends meet, you'll have limited means to do so. But what really disheartened us as well, we've seen the impact of the cost of living crisis when elderly parents are in the hospital. They're in the hospital, they're laying there, and oftentimes you have to give updates to the family. As doctors, it's your responsibility. Call the next of kin, call the family. Your father's here, your mother's here, we're looking after her, we're treating her with this, we're treating them with this, this was the diagnosis, etc. And on the other side, they'll say, I can't come in now, I have work. And that's the sad reality of the situation. So I wanted to touch upon the birrul walidain aspect of it, and that, okay, yes, you can say we're content, we're getting by, that's good, alhamdulillah, but you want to take things to new heights. Do you want to really take care of your parents and your wider family? So tell us about your experiences in that aspect.
Wallahi, to be honest with you, man, not many things get me emotional. Wallahi, not many things get me emotional. But, if you cannot be there for your parents, now what are you doing, man? Like, seriously speaking, if you cannot even be there for your parents, if you can't be there for your mother when she needs you, the fact that she's raised you to who you are today, the fact that she raised you to, the 30-year-old, the 35-year-old man that you've become today is because of your mother and your father. And if you can't be there when she is in hospital laying there and you feel like I need to go to job because I need to get paid my salary and stuff like that, you do not want to be in that situation, man. You don't want to be in the situation where your mum needs you, and sometimes it's like you can't do anything, but wallahi, I tell you something, the only thing your mum needs at that point is for you to hold her hand and just speak to her. That's all she needs. Like, she doesn't need you to come up with a miracle medicine or something like that. She just needs to hold your hand and she just needs to speak to you. And if you can't be there for your mother at that point, I'll be honest with you, man, you have to question what you're doing in your life. You have to question what you're doing. If at that point you can't be there for your mother or your father that need you, as they've raised you to who you are today, but you have to go into work. And yeah, I understand. And I'll tell you something. This was actually one of the biggest reasons that I left my job. This was one of the biggest reasons I left my job. And I've spoken about this many times before, and I'll speak about it again. And, there was a scare. My father went to the hospital and, we didn't know what it was, and et cetera, et cetera. And, I told my manager, I said, listen, I need to go to the hospital. And he, by the way, turned around and he said, yeah, completely understand, man, not a problem. Spent 2 days in the office, 2 days in the hospital, 3 days in the hospital. Third day, I get a message, by the way, like, when are you looking to come back to work? Right?
Yeah.
And, I realized, man, I was like, alhamdulillah, at that point, my father, it was nothing serious and, everything was okay. But I did realize, and I was like, man, like, if something, this is a warning. This is a warning, because if my dad actually did have something wrong with him, I couldn't imagine your parents are in a situation where it's their last 3 or 6 months. May Allah protect all our parents, right? But the reality is there's going to come a point where some of our parents will fall very ill. If you can't be there for them in their last 6 months and serve them, it is nothing compared to what they've done for you. But if you can't even be there for them in the last 6 months, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you even doing with your life? You are definitely the lowest achiever, no matter what you are, if you can't even be there for your mother for the last 6 months.
SubhanAllah. I think that's deep, absolutely profound. I think when it comes to supporting your parents in that time of difficulty, you want to make sure that they have the best possible services that they can. Also, from that perspective, you do realize is that things can go wrong all of a sudden. You may have to face a very extensive bill. There have been people who have come from abroad in a country. They may not necessarily have healthcare there. You're faced with a decision. Now you have to somehow roll out 10,000, 15,000 all of a sudden in order to take care of your parents. Even within the hospital setting as well, those who have their relatives visiting them, their morale is improved, making sure that they're on top of the diet and etc. It really provides more manpower and more help for the
I
patient.
do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, and again, you guys are the experts, right? But just having family around and your family like comforting the patient and having a little laugh with the patient and making them feel happy. I've experienced it in my life and many a times where my family, someone in my family has been unwell. We always try to create a healthy environment and it makes that person feel better.
It does.
Like really.
It does. The psychological impact it has and the benefit it provides, because they always talk about the psyche, the mental and the physical body going hand in hand, right? There's all these like new studies and things that show that your psyche affects the way your body reacts to stuff. And even we know with regards to cortisol, stress hormone release and etc. etc. So it has a huge impact.
Shows, man. I mean, it just shows like I don't know, man. It's just it is sad because it's just nice. Like now today, I know that if my it actually happened to me when I was in Dubai. And my mum, she had I think I might have spoken to you about it, to be fair. I think I did speak to you about it, right? Anyway, she fell unwell.
She was here at the time.
Yeah, she was in the UK at the time. She fell unwell. And the funny thing is, I actually, alhamdulillah, as Allah Azza wa Jalla has given me a little bit, the first thing I thought is, listen, private, like, let me go private, right?
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I never knew, right?
Yeah.
I know, but I never knew there's no such thing as private A&E,
Yeah.
right? I was like, surely I can get a private A&E. And everyone was like, no, you have to wait for like, and I was like, and then I think I asked you the question, I asked someone the question, I was like, so what does David Beckham do? Like, I don't understand. Like, does he got A&E as well? Like, but anyway, Qadar Allah, I was in Dubai. My mum fell a little bit unwell. And, I was able to, I would love to, in an ideal situation, being with my mother. Unfortunately, I wasn't. But straight away, as soon as I knew my mum fell unwell, got the next ticket back to the UK, like within hours. And I was in the UK, 10 hours later sort of thing. And that's the thing, like you can't plan for life sometimes, but sometimes you just want to be in a situation where if anyone ever needs you, you're able to be there.
Yeah.
I think that's the sort of situation. And you want to be in that, basically.
And even there's elective procedures as well, whereby someone may be in pain, struggling, he needs a procedure, but because of scheduling things and priorities as well, it's not like an acutely thing that's going to cause an emergent or like a emergency problem for him, right? He's able to wait, but they're waiting in pain, granted, right? Your parent may have to wait on that list for 9 weeks, 10 weeks.
Okay, it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that.
Subhanallah,
But I think it's important, the fact that we've touched on all of these elements, right? And that's what doctors need to do more so nowadays. Financial, family, even if you look at the suicide statistics, right? People who have risk factors that they're less likely to do suicide, those who have religious conviction, those who have family, they're supportive factors to make sure that they don't go down that path. Okay, so we've talked about the negatives of not being able to do birrul walidain, but what about some of the heights? And so we want people to have something to aspire to, not just if something goes wrong, but what about the heights? Taking them for umrah, making sure they have appropriate living, all that they need. Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, I think, look, like, and I'll be clear when I say this, right? I can never, ever repay my parents for what they have done for me, no matter what I do,
100%.
right? And I don't think any of you can repay your parents for what they do for us, right? Having said that, it is nice and it is a blessing to be, I think one of my biggest achievements last year had nothing to do with money. It was just the fact that I took my parents to Umrah. That was my biggest achievement, It was the fact that we went to Umrah together and, it's the little things that growing up, I saw my mom sometimes stressing about something, a bill, sometimes stressing about, I saw it. We all, see our parents, they're stressing about something. And, listen, I come from a very, I wouldn't even say middle class. I would say below middle class, right? My parents would stress out and my parents would sometimes, get upset at each other because of bills, right? And I saw that growing up. And today, alhamdulillah, it is very nice to see my mom not stressing because she's like, it's weird, right? But I think we would all aspire to have our mothers feel like this. It's like she feels like, I got my son, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's how she feels, right? Alhamdulillah, Allah has put me in that position. And, but it's very nice to see my mother to just be like, she'll say something, she might crack a joke with me sort of thing. She'll be like, oh, you got another ticket. Oh, it doesn't matter. You'll deal with it, won't you? Right? But it's like, but she doesn't stress now.
Yeah.
I don't see that stress now, and the other things of, the first time, just from an avenue of materialism as well. Because look, it's nice to be able to treat your parents as well. The first time my parents sat in business class and I took in business class and my parents' face, it was like, what is this? And they were like, and you know, and even like I remember saying to my wife, I was like, even if we have to sit in economy, we'll sit in economy, we'll sit in, you know. But then I wanted to see their reaction, so it was like, but you know, the first time they sat in business class and we went to Dubai. No, we actually went to Pakistan from Dubai, and it was the happiness that I saw on their face. You know, it's like, it's so funny, but it's like when you get a child a gift and you see the happy, it's just, it doesn't matter what, no, it's not even about the money, it's just seeing them happy.
Yeah.
You know, and these things definitely, man, it makes you, it gives you some element of fulfillment, because you feel like at least you're able to give back to your parents. At least your parents feel like, you know what, I have a son where, don't worry, man, like, you know, alhamdulillah for everything, you know. And you know, again, everything is in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and we're very limited in what we can and can't do, and we can't do anything without Allah, and that is to emphasize that no matter what. But it's just nice that they feel comforted that our son can look after us, because I tell you, man, a lot of parents are worried that our kids can't look after us. You know, parents really do worry about that. There are parents who put money aside. And I would say this is probably an unspoken thing, right? There are a lot of parents that put money aside for their burials because they think they can't, their children can't pay for it. And I would say this is very common. I would say, in fact, this is more common than not common, you know. And your parents feel like they can't, unfortunately, you don't want to be in that situation. As children, we want to be able to have our parents not stressing about things like that, man. You know?
Also, they want to see you thriving as well, that you're content with the life you're living, that you're actually thriving, that okay, things are good, not just that you coming home emotionless. Again, as you said, the same energy which you're able to give to your spouse, you want to be able to give to them, give that quality time, give that love, and just be like, mom, dad, I'm okay, alhamdulillah, I'm happy, I'm thriving, my life's in check, my deen's on point, everything. All of these things that transfers over to your parents. Can you imagine how much for your parents if one individual is to memorize the Quran? Subhanallah, what, like, if he's optimized his situation in life holistically, right? And what better way to optimize yourself than to memorize the book of Allah?
100%.
And the honor which they have in this dunya before the akhirah as well, it's genuinely insane. Any viewer, I just genuinely want to stress upon this, that it's not just one-sided. This is what I love about your content as well, Allah Mubarak, is that it's not about flashy, showing off the flashy car. These things, once you reach a certain level, it's very possible to do so. It's very easy to demonstrate all of these things on social media, whatnot. No problem at all. But what is more important, subhanAllah, seeing your parents smile, spending time with them, taking them for Hajj, Umrah, even though we can never repay them, subhanAllah.
The real sakina, that's where it comes from. The real, what would even the English word be? the real peace that you have in your heart, that's what it comes from, man. Like, you know, seeing your parents happy. And it's very important that you mention this, man, because time is the most valuable thing. And I remember I was working a job in Dubai, and I was working there for 3 months. And this is back when I was like 22, 23 years old, right? And I remember having a conversation with my mother. And, you know, my mother was very much like, look, I'm happy you're focusing on your career and you're doing well, etc., etc. And I was on the phone and I said, Mom, I'm thinking of coming back. And she's like, oh, why? Like, don't be silly. Like, don't come back, basically, right? And I said to her, Mom, let me ask you a question. She goes, yeah. At the time, my mother's mother had passed away. Allah yarham. I mean, and so she passed away. And I said to my mom, and I said, Mom, question. How much would you give away to spend one more day with your mother? And she goes, well, I'd give away everything. And I said, so how can I be here in Dubai trying to earn money with my job? And maybe I'm making an extra £1,000 a month, but I don't get to see my mother. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what it comes down to, man. It's priority. It is genuine priority. Like, there's no point you making the money if you are sacrificing on other things. And this is important. Like, we're not here saying make money. Memorize Quran. Focus on your religion. Do what you have to do on the deen. You know, that is a must. Be good to your parents. Be good to your wife. Be good to your children. But it all ties in. It all ties in. And it becomes extremely, extremely difficult when you are working your job. To then, what we're saying is this. It becomes extremely, extremely difficult when you're working a 9-to-5 job because of the pressures and what it comes with, to then balance this as well. It's very possible, no doubt. But it's no doubt, it's very hard.
100%, bro. Facts. And that's a perfect segue into the question that we had for you. The next
Sure.
question, which is, a lot of people may be sitting here thinking, well, you know what? It's important what you lot have mentioned, but I'm an orphan. I've got no mother. My father's passed away. My mum, Allah alam where she is, or she's passed away as well. So I can't do that. Like, I can't sort of relate. But we're all hopefully gonna have offspring. We're all gonna have children, and what we want to ask you is, you've mentioned obviously that it's all good making all of this much money, and it's not about the money, etc. It's what it gives you, the access it gives you, is in terms of like giving your rights to the family members, giving your rights to your parents, etc., doing more for them, basically enhancing every aspect of life that we've touched on. What we want to focus on now is the offspring. Okay, what the relationship between you and your children, how will this concept in internalizing this concept, how does it enhance that? How does it improve it?
So, alhamdulillah, we are homeschooling my son.
Allah barik.
Barakallah.
Yeah.
Even though that we live in the UAE, which is obviously a Muslim country, and actually I live in towards the Sharjah, basically, which is a very Islamic area to live in, to be fair as well. Sharjah.
Yeah.
But I would say that one of the best things that I'm able to do, I'll mention a couple of things here. One of the best things I'm able to do is, again, the same way, like I said, I spend valuable time with my missus, I spend valuable time with my son. And if I was to, and you don't usually see this, but if I was to call my wife right now and I'd say, ask my son, Mama or Baba, he'll say Baba, basically. Right? He'll say Baba. But the funny thing here is, and the reason I mention this, right, is because unfortunately our fathers, many of us had hardworking fathers that were unable to give a lot of time at home, which sometimes many of us didn't really get that father and son relationship as much as we would have liked to. And in defense for our fathers, obviously they were trying to put food on the table and they were doing what they had to for our family. It's a sacrifice they had to make, right? It's not a sacrifice we have to make as well. You can take action today. You can take action today and put yourself in a situation where you are able to spend a day with your son. Because a day with your son is what he's going to remember forever. If you cannot even take your son to the masjid, and then when he's 16 and you're saying, go to the masjid, he hasn't been going to the masjid for 16 years. Yeah. Right? So now, with my son, for example, for every salah, he comes with me. He's been coming with me, and everyone around me knows this. Everyone that sees me in the masjid, they know, Musa, where's Musa? Because he's with me always. Right? So the point is create a healthy environment for your children and allow them to be good Muslims. But more importantly, right, I've been through the academia life. I've been through school, college, university. I know what it comes with. Yeah. I've been through working a job. Inshallah, if Allah allows me to live where my son gets to a certain age, my son doesn't need to work, right? Work on the deen, work on the businesses. You create a healthy environment for your children. That's what we're expected to as fathers, right? And that's what you should aspire to. Imagine having a situation where none of your children feel like they ever need to work for a job. Your son is going to say, can I please have a day off? And nope, you can't have a day off, or next week, or something like that. You want your son, your children to be in a situation where they're like, I am able to live the life that I want. Imagine creating that for your family, And I think that's important. I think we should all aspire to that, for our sons, our daughters, and everyone.
Yeah, and part of what you mentioned is it's not just about, we already alluded to it. Not alluded to it, we discussed it, went in depth at the beginning. It's about that we've all discussed the problems you'll see in corporate environments, etc. You don't want to then, the tarbiyah you've been doing, it's going to be undone in about 2-3 years. You know what I mean? So like with all everything, the environment they're in, the distractions, the music, everything. So it's just about enhancing that tarbiyah like throughout. Like it doesn't just stop when they're in their adolescence. It continues after, even when he's become a grown man, he's about to start working. You want to then have some sort of, not control, but like create that healthy environment that you mentioned.
As fathers, and obviously it's not Mother's Day, but as fathers, we should always be aspiring. Like we always want to be the support to our children. Even when my son is whatever age, if Allah allows me to live, then I would want to support him no matter what. Even if like your son is 40, he's still your son, right? So you want to support no matter what. And the point is you want to be in that situation where you can, right? And you want to be in a situation where your son looks up to you. That is crucial. Your son should look up to you and you should be your son's role model. Now imagine you're, not achieving anything. You yourself are like, I need to become something, etc., etc., etc. Who's your son looking up to?
Exactly.
You're not the role model anymore. Someone else is. And if someone else becomes the role model, it's a problem now.
John at work is.
Whoever, right? Whoever the role model becomes. Like, for example, when I started working, right, it was like my director's my role model, right? But imagine, I'm just painting a picture now, yeah? And please, I don't want any judgments from the views or anything like that. I'm going to paint a picture and I need you guys to be like, take 2 steps back on this advice, right? I went to work. The person I was looking up to became my director, right? He's always making like, 200 grand a year. He's balling. Imagine my dad was making 2 M's, for example, 2 million a year. I'm like, bro, my director, bro, my dad's sick, right? Yeah. Now, the director, maybe he goes to the pub, maybe he does X, fulan, whatever sort of thing. My dad, he goes to the masjid all the time. He goes to salah all the time. He reads Quran, and he's like, it's that, I don't know if you guys seen that. I love that video. It's of Sheikh Abdul Sufi.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
his dad was when
he says when he goes, I want to learn English. He goes, I want to learn English, and my dad said, all these shops like I own them, but I don't know English. Bro, that story is amazing, because actually if you think about it, you want to be your son's and your children's role model, because then your children will be like, hang on a minute, this guy thinks he's all that, falls into haram, falls into this and that and that. And it's not to say that money is the only way of measuring, but there's no doubt when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, you look at a flashy car and you look at this and you look at that, and that person becomes your role model. Now imagine you being that guy where it's like, oh, but Baba, he's like all that and he's like humble and he's like goes to the masjid, reads Quran. Like, why would X man be my role model when Baba's like sick? And you want to be in that situation for your parents. For your children, rather.
It's the same for daughters as well. They know what to look out for, and
the man that they want to get married to, right? Again, your daughter should think, my father is like this. He treats mama like this. So therefore, I want someone who is like Baba, basically, right? Now, obviously, your daughter she knows what the bar is. The bar is very high. Set that bar high for your daughters. So your daughters themselves, they see this is how a real man should be. Now, if you're treating your wife a certain way, if you're out of the house all the time, if you're not giving time to your children, etc., etc., what's your daughter going to say? Well, your daughter's going to say, you know what? X man, he's whatever sort of thing. He's not great in his career. He's nothing. At least he loves me. Right? But actually, if you as the father and the husband are loving to your wife, etc., etc., that's what your children see.
Tabarakallah. Going on to the next chapter of your journey, Tabarakallah, you facilitated your parents to move with you to Sharjah, and we've touched a lot about mental health in this topic, and I think an important thing to consider is the baseline level of anxiety, and a lot of this is related to the situation where you're in, the geographical location you're in, especially with some place that's not necessarily very safe. You may be exposed to very bad influences as well. You're not able to afford a good neighborhood as well. But if you have the means, you're able to sometimes even not only move area, move country as well. You feel that your family's safe, your wife, your children, etc. So how has that been for you? And just moving to a land that is considered to be safer and just...
Yeah, subhanAllah, I've not mentioned this anywhere, to be fair. I've not actually discussed it with anyone, but I'll mention it here. I'll give you guys a slight exclusive, I guess.
Oh, I'm bad.
It's nothing to laugh about, to be fair, so I don't know why I'm laughing. But... so obviously I now live in the UAE. I live in Sharjah. It's a very, very safe environment. You're never going to have any issues. Alhamdulillah, I'm sure you can come across issues, but it's much safer compared to the UK. And let me give you an example. My wife, she wears niqab, right? And just the other day, I won't go into the details of it, but she was, I would say racially abused, basically, right? Just the other day in the petrol station, because of her niqab. And the individual pointed out that niqab. I wasn't there, luckily. Otherwise maybe I wouldn't be sitting here, right? But the reality is that person, and these are the realities. Your sisters and your wives are not completely safe. They are not safe from the racial abuse. They are not safe from the physical abuse because of what they wear. And if you're telling yourself, no, that's not an issue, you are lying to yourself. You're not being a man, and you don't want to create a different situation for your family, because that is the reality. And I've seen it many a times. So let's not shy away from the fact that these things are happening and your family are not completely safe. And wallahi, I'll tell you something. Since then, my son has, and this is very important, it's not just about your wife, because your wife's an adult. She can deal with this. It's about your children.
Yeah.
My son was in the car, and since then, he's been scared to go out.
SubhanAllah.
It's been 4 or 5 days, and he's when he goes out, like, he feels a bit nervous or sort of thing. When he's with me, he's completely fine, and he hasn't been with. He's at the in-laws right now. But the point being, I guess I'm making to you guys is, this is a little bit of an extreme example, and your wives and your sisters are not safe from it. They are not, right? Let me give you a very simple example. When your wife and your sisters in hijab, abaya, niqab, when they go to the shop, they're spoken to in a certain way numerous amount of times, right? A little bit rude, a little bit whatever. It might not be abuse, but just that tone is a little bit different, and that is numerous amount of times, a week, a month, whatever you want to say. Your children see that. Children are extremely, extremely smart. They see it, guys. I promise you, right? Your children grow up. Do you think they would want to look like their mama and baba, knowing that they get disrespected all the time? They don't.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you are putting into their heads that looking like a Muslim comes with abuse.
Yeah.
There is no denying it. It's a fact. And my thing is this, when my missus is in the UAE, royalty. Wallahi, she is treated like royalty because she wears niqab.
I know about it.
When Musa sees me, I'm wearing a thobe, royalty. Protect your offspring, man, because we are responsible for our offspring. And just the only thing I would say is, don't put yourself in a situation where you're like, no, it's okay, it's not that bad, it's extreme. It's not. Stop lying to yourself. Actually be a man and try to create change. That's it. Even if it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that, but try.
Jazakumullah khairan.
Barakallah feek.
We've touched upon holistic elements of life, setting up all the aspects of your life wheel to a great level, okay? Once you've surpassed that level, basic needs and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You've surpassed the basic needs, right? You're looking at greater things, okay? Your family's settled, your relationship, finances, okay? You can pay the bills, etc. Deen is good as well. What about legacy? Let's talk about legacy and the importance of leaving something beyond you before you die. Since we've known you, the amount of benefit, Allah Mubarak, that Allah has allowed you to give to us, to whatever we have going on, the various other lives that you've touched through your message and things like this. This is in and of itself a legacy. Tell us about your experiences and your goals for the future as well in the legacy aspect, but also just the importance of attaining that greater goal which you desire to leave behind after you die.
I will give 50% of the answer. I never say no to answer. I never say no to questions. And I think this is the first time on a podcast that I'm about to say that I will only answer 50% of the answer. And I think because even the deen teaches us to be quiet on certain matters, right? And so there are things that I want to do, right? And there are things that I don't speak out about. And maybe out of the podcast, you could ask me and I could speak to you about it, right? So I will give 50% of the answer. And the 50% that I won't answer is the 50%, the legacy after death. But the 50% that I will answer is, the goal is no longer money, if I'm being completely honest. And it has never been money. After the first year of me starting my business, the goal was totally away from money. It never was. The goal now, alhamdulillah, shukrullah azza wa jal, is actually to create opportunities and create healthy environments for Muslim and make an impact. That in short is what I would say. And I would say that is in essence what I try to do with my businesses. That is what I try to do with my employees. That is what I try to create a healthy environment for Muslims and for Muslims to feel empowered. Because currently we live in a day and age where Muslims don't feel empowered. Actually, they run away from the fact that they don't want to be known as Muslims. So one of the biggest things I try to focus on is empowering Muslims and knowing that you can have a beard, you can be a Muslim, speak about the deen, and actually achieve a lot of money as well. That's something which you don't see a lot, unfortunately. In fact, I would say, people struggle with it, massively. I don't want to make a harsh statement right now, but the reality is, when I came on the social media scene, one of the biggest reasons I came on it is because I didn't see anyone that was talking about the deen and saying stay away from haram, don't go Friday pubs, you know, don't shake hands with the opposite, you know, gender, you know, stay tight to your religion, practice your religion, study the deen, as well as achieve something in the world, become a business person, do something for yourself, achieve high. I didn't see anyone doing that. So it became a thing where I wanted to become, you know, the older brother to a lot of the younger generation and be like, look, you guys, if you want to ask me questions, you can. And hopefully then the role model is Abu Musa, who's a Muslim and achieves something, and not someone else, you know, who achieves money. But unfortunately, it's because unfortunately the youth, well, the way a lot of the youth think, either you can be religious or you can be wealthy. That's not true. You can have both. But we just don't have the role models, because unfortunately, when you have the wealthy people, you'll see them falling into some sort of haram. Though the Muslims will turn around and say to you, yeah, but you have to take out loans, you have to have a credit card, you have to do this, yeah. So, you know, that's why it's very important. And so I will, you know, in a very political way answer that question. And, you know, I would say that I make dua to Allah Azza wa Jalla always, that bi'idhnillah, there are other things that I want to achieve and do, but they will always be for the Muslims, inshallah. And there is a legacy, inshallah, if Allah allows me to do it. Yeah, and maybe we'll see that with time.
May Allah aid you up on khair. Jazakumullah khair. I hope we've given everyone food for thought, and just strive for excellence and think about all of these holistic areas of your life, see which one you want to improve on, and just take the steps necessary to get there. Inshallah, make sure to follow Abu Musa. All the links are down below. He teaches recruitment courses as well as a platform called Teach You, which teaches you all about business. Just drop your plugs, inshallah, your links. Yeah, have anything to say about that?
No, I don't have anything to say about that in particular, but I think if we're concluding, I think the one thing I do want to emphasize is people usually focus on becoming extremely good in a week or 2 weeks, and people usually, you know, they'll watch this podcast and be like, yeah, boom, I'm ready, I'm motivated, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I think it's important to mention here that change doesn't happen within a week or 2 weeks. In fact, I would much rather people work on their goals in every single part of their life, 2% or 3%, than working at 80% for a week and then giving up. Don't worry and don't think about putting 100% in for 2 weeks, because it will never happen. You know, just change little things in your life. If you're not reading Quran, read one ayah of the Quran. Wallahi, I'm telling you, it's such an improvement, right? If, you know, you have nothing, you know, if you have no plans on starting a business, just start thinking, you know what, one day I do want to start a business, because that is a little bit of an improvement. So little improvements, consistency is what will change you. It will never happen within a week or 2 weeks. So if you're motivated watching this, good, be motivated, but understand that consistency and do things over 3, 4, 5 years, that's when you will see change.
Barakallah feek, bro. I hope this even planted, like, for those that may be a bit anxious to take the first step, at least it just plants that seed, you know, gets people just changing the way people think. So barakallah feek for coming on. There's a lot more that we can delve into, inshallah, and we will try our best. If you're free or you have the opportunity to come back, inshallah, back on the pod at some point. And inshallah, as I mentioned, we'll drop everything, all the links. If you want to get Maray, again, our sponsors, and Healthy Nikah, we'll put the links in the bio again, and we'll put it on the screen. Until next time, barakallahu feekum.
Assalamu alaikum.